we're moving on to square roots. Okay, you have a paper in front of you that I passed out, the square root chart. You also have it on today's slide. Okay, May 3rd. You also have it on today's slide. I'm not sure why some of you are on the homework screen yet. I'm a little confused there. Okay, square roots are the opposite of squares, right? And we've done squares already, right? So if we would say 5 squared, what does that look like? That looks like 5 times 5, right? Okay. Square roots are just the opposite, right? So if we would say the square root of 25, okay, you would have to come up with, bless you, 2 factors that are the same when multiplied together. They give you the square root of 25. Okay, in this case, obviously, that would be 5 times 5, right? So we don't write 5 times 5. We just say that it's 5. Does that make sense? It's just the opposite. Okay, somebody asked, are we going to be able to use a calculator or a chart? No, that's why it's called memorization. It's called, you got to learn how to study at some point. So you got today, tomorrow, and Wednesday to look over that chart to memorize the square roots and the squares up to 25. Okay, so again, as long as you know your facts, obviously the larger numbers are going to be the issue because we don't really get into our facts of those large numbers, but that's why I'm giving you a couple days, and it's online, plus it's on plus I gave you the square root paper. Okay, everybody okay with the square root and the square? Yes or no? Okay, because here's what we don't want you to do, right? If we would give you the square root of 169, that's a tough one. Okay, now square roots, they're the same number that is multiplied together. So now you got to start fishing. Oh no, what's something times something? The same number is going to give me 169. Is it 10? Is it 12? Is it 14? Is it 15? Is it... Okay, over here, we don't want you to start doing some side math. This is what we don't want you to do. That would be bad. That's why it's called memorization. Okay, so you should be able to look at the square after you study your sheet and come up with, this is called the square root, just so our terminology is right. This is the square root. This is just called the square. Okay, because some people might say, what's the square root of 15? Okay, so they're giving you the square. You got to come up with the square root, which would be 225. That makes sense with the terminology? It's pretty simple. If they say square root, then it's got, let me change gears here. It has this sign right here. Do you know what that sign is called? Right now? It's called a radical sign. Square root, the square root sign is called a radical sign. Anybody know what the number inside of it is called? That actually has a mathematical name to it. That is called the radicand. Those of you just staring at the screen, not writing anything down, I don't know if Thursday is going to go well for you. All right. So if we have this, we'll just do a couple of these. Find the length of the square. They give you that the area is equal to 144 divided by 25 square units. Okay, if they give you the if they give you the square, then you got to find the square root. Right? We got to find this thing. Okay, because it clearly says square units. Okay, that's 144 divided by 25. Okay, all you have to do is find the square root of the square of 144. Which you have the paper in front of you, so what would that be? That would be what? That would be 12. Okay. Over, what's the square of 25? Square root of 25. 5, right? So this is your answer. So the length, see, we don't want the decimal. Whatever you do, if you come up with decimals, you're doing it wrong. No decimals are allowed. Okay. So each side of this square right here is radical 12 over 5, square root of 12 over 5. That's the length of each side. That's all the farther that we need to go right now. That's this side, that's this side, and that's that side. So far, so good? I'll assume your silence means yes. Okay, we'll just stick with our squares. Length, find the length of the side. Oops. Again, we'll say the area is 64 over 9 square units. What's the square of 64? Square root? Sorry, square root of 64. Brady? That would be 8. Square root of 9, the square root of 9, Kayon? That would be 3. That means that each side is 8 divided by 3, the square root of 8 divided by 3, the square root of 8 divided by 3, the square root of 8 divided by 3. Hence why you need to know that paper in front of you. It makes your life a whole lot easier. Otherwise, you're going to be doing a lot of side math and wasting your time. Right? Okay. Everybody good with that, right? You just got to know that squares, as you go through tonight or whatever. You can use the paper, whatever, but you're not going to be able to use that paper on Thursday's quiz, so you're going to need to know them by then. I have to invest some time in studying those. Okay. If we are given, let's talk about squares. The square root of 64 is what? Okay. Can it be negative 8? Based on what I've said so far, what do you think? Benson says no. Anybody else? Cole, what do you think? No? Logan? Logan says yes. Why do you think? What do you think, Michael? Okay. Logan, why do you think yes? That is correct, sir. Children, you lost track of what your squares were. 8 times 8 is 64. A negative times a negative yields you a positive 64. So all square roots actually have two squares, a positive and a negative. Nice job, Logan. Okay. Now, that being said, we're not going to heavily concentrate on the negatives, just to let you know. Okay, same thing here. You got 225. The possible squares are, I'm just making you aware of this, there is an opposite. Okay, 15 and negative 15 are possible squares to the square root of 225. How about 625? What's that one on your sheet? 25. That's positive 25, and it could also yield us a negative 25. Now, notice the square root is not negative. We're talking about the squares. Right? Remember that terminology we talked? Okay, just making sure that you're aware of that. Okay. Now, let's move on. What if we have this? Now we have a negative on the outside of the radical sign. Do you recall this? Remember the absolute value of a number? Remember the distance away from 0? Okay, well, when we're talking about square roots, we're not talking about that, but I just want to show you this because it's similar. What did we do at the bottom one? Do you remember what the answer was down there? Logan, do you remember? Okay, it was negative 36, right? Okay, because this was a distance away from 0, right? Why is it negative? Because the negative is on the outside. Okay, when we talked about absolute values. What's the square of 36? 6. Since the negative is on the outside, it comes along for the ride. Does that make sense? Since it's on the outside. Anybody have a question? No, nobody has any curiosity about anything? Benson? Well, in this case, since there's a negative on the outside, it's going to be negative 6. Yeah. There's always an opposite to it, and it's the positive. Correct. But in this case, your answer would be negative 6. It wouldn't be positive 6 because there's a negative on the outside of the radical sign. Okay, it's a good question. Nobody has any questions about Nobody has any curiosity about anything? Like if it's on the inside? What do you think now? Any ideas? Addie, what do you think? Still what? Still -6? Okay. Anybody else? Michael? Okay. About the only two options, right? Okay. When there's a negative, hopefully you're listening here. When there's a negative inside the radical sign, those are called imaginary numbers. They don't exist in the real world. They're in the math world, they're called imaginary numbers. They don't exist. So, will you ever get a negative inside the radical sign in here? No, they don't exist. They're imaginary numbers. Okay, so the sign is going to be on the outside, if anywhere. Making sense? That should be fairly easy to recognize if you get one of those. Okay, because on your calculator, I believe it shows up, what does it say? Systematic errors, syntax errors, something like that. You can't do it. It's an imaginary number. They don't exist. Okay, so far so good? All right. Wanted to make sure we covered that. Okay, next one. Okay, so we have plus minus radical 196. What do you think the answer to that is? You can look on your sheet, children. That's what it's there for. Ready? That is correct. Your answer is plus and minus, or plus -14. Can be either one. Getting the idea here? Whatever the sign is on the outside needs to be carried along over to your square. If it's positive, do you have to do anything to it? No. If it's negative, you got to carry the negative over. If it's plus minus or plus negative, you got to carry that over to the square. Okay, those signs are very important on the outside of the radical sign to the left of it. Positive, you do nothing. Negative, you got to carry it over. Positive and negative, you got to carry it both over. Right, so if we just had the square root of 81, your answer would just be, what would it be? Just be 9. That's it. You don't have to put plus 9 because it's a positive number. Stop tapping on the floor, please. All right, so far so good? Oh boy. Okay, with this example, and I just want to show this to you, because somebody said, do we know what the square root of 2 and 2500ths is? No, you don't. Okay. Okay, if something like this would arise, you would be able to use your Desmos calculator. Okay, because we don't expect you to know two numbers when multiplied together that give you 2 and 2500. Even though you may know it, I don't know. Okay. So with that being said, let's do one of these. Okay, over here with the Desmos calculator, do you see the radical sign there? See that? And the cursor comes up underneath. So if you plug in, oops, I hit the wrong button. Pete. 225, look what he gives us over here to the right. All the way over here. Do you see it? Can you see it on your, you can't see it over there? Oh, okay. It's 1.5, that is correct. Okay, so on your, get out of here. Right here is your radical sign. Right? Plug that in, the cursor automatically comes up. Now, unfortunately, you won't be able to use this on Thursday's quiz because the quiz will be over the square root chart. Okay. Why are we not going back? Oh, I know. I need that. What the heck? Oh, there we go. Sheesh. I picked the right one. Okay, so here we have 6. Oops, sorry. Okay, the radical sign is a grouping symbol which acts like parentheses. So when there's a number next to parentheses, what does that mean? There you go. It means means multiplication. Now what does that question turn into? Right here. I don't want the answer, but what does it turn into? Brady? Nope. Nope. Emma? An expression? It can be a numerical expression, but what are you noticing up there? Please don't talk to Ryan, Massa. What do you see up there that you got to follow? Oh, sure, you all know now. Turned into the order of operations. Anytime that you have 2 operations, you got to start thinking the order of operations, right? Okay, so what do we get when we get 6 times 1 5/10? Anybody? Keon? 9 minus 4.5 yields us 4 8/10. Okay. Logan, you have a question? I understand how the square root of the decimal works. Okay. Sure, go ahead. So you can actually distribute it, and it's actually 225 times 1/100, or it's 225 over 100. But it turns into that fraction. You can, right, but not everybody understands it that way. So you could use the square root button to help you. Yeah, I know. Right, and we don't want to start using those numbers. All right, here we go. How about this? So we have. Teachers, please excuse this interruption. Brief announcement. 6th grade Chinese students, please report to your essay classes today and complete assignments for Chinese class during student assist. Again, any students in 6th grade Chinese, please report to your essay class today and complete assignments for Chinese class during student assist. Thank you. Have a great day. All right. So look at this thing. We got 3 on the outside of parentheses. Radical 48 divided by 3 minus 2, all inside the parentheses. Well, what are we going to do first? The only thing different here is a radical sign. It's the only thing that's introduced that's new here today. So what are you going to start with? The parentheses, right? Got to do parentheses first. We got to follow the order of operations. Okay, what's 48 divided by 3? Anybody know? Okay, so now we have a radical 16 because we solved inside the radical sign. Okay, it doesn't go away because we didn't solve everything. We still have a number underneath there. Okay. The radical sign is like the innermost parentheses. We still have to get rid of that radical sign before we do anything else. What's the square of 16? 4, right? So now it goes away, and you're literally left with something that looks like that. 3 times 2 is going to give us 6. So it started off looking rather ominous. 3 parentheses radical 48 divided by 3 minus 2. Oh my gosh. Okay, but again, the radical sign you can treat like the innermost parentheses. You have to do, that's kind of an exception to the rule. Okay, so you divide and get whatever number is underneath the radical sign. It doesn't go away because you haven't solved it completely. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, and now we get to our inequalities. So we have a radical 49 divided by 9. Is that greater than, less than, or equal to 2? Okay. Well, what's the square of 49? What's the square of 9? 3. So that's where you got to leave it. There's nothing you can do there, right? That's going to be a decimal number. Okay, but you do know that 703 is an improper fraction, right? And you do know how to change that. Not that we're going to. A question like this, you're going to be able to use a calculator to use your radical sign or whatever. But you really don't have to. How many 3's go into 7? 2, and you got what left over? 1/3, right? Yep. So guess what? Radical 7/3 is bigger than 2. Yeah, you should. There's nothing on there that's new, once again, other than the radical sign. The process stays the same. Okay. 2/5 greater than, less than, or equal to radical 12/75. Okay. Obviously, 2/5 stays the same. What do we get over here with radical? What does that reduce down to? Logan? 4/25 is correct, sir. What does 4/25 look like as a, anybody know? Decimal? This is where you probably need your calculator. Michael, do you know? No. Jayon? What would it be? No. It's hard. I mean, you're not gonna know. Logan, you may know. They're equal, children. This is 4/10. This is equal to 4/10. That's chapter 4, right? Okay, so, well, listen, this is why I gave you this one. You're going to be able to use your calculator on this, or your Desmos radical sign there. Okay, radical 4/25 is 4/10. Don't need to stress out over those because when you are given those, okay, you'll be able to use the Desmos radical sign for that. All right, everybody good? Okay, you have some practice problems there. First, there is a Quizlet there for you to study as well. There's all kinds of things for you to be successful on Thursday's quiz. Unfortunately, the X factor is you have to invest some time in knowing them. In the event that you don't know them, you're going to struggle on Thursday.